Far beneath the soil of a quiet German meadow, a story waits in silence. The place is known as Schöningen in Lower Saxony. Today, it seems unremarkable: grassy fields, scattered trees, and the gentle outlines of lakes. But long ago, this was a very different landscape. Beneath the modern earth lies a layer of peat, thick and dark, which hides traces of a world that existed almost 400,000 years ago. It is here, in the 1990s, that archaeologists uncovered something that would change the way early human history is understood. From the damp layers of peat, perfectly preserved wooden spears emerged, still shaped, still balanced, still sharp enough to remind us of the hands that made them. Wood rarely survives in the archaeological record. Stone tools endure, bone fragments linger, but wood decays quickly, vanishing into soil and water. For hundreds of thousands of years, the tools most used by early humans were wooden, yet almost none remain. The discovery at Schöningen was therefore astonishing. 8 spears, carved with care and left in the mud of an ancient lake shore, had endured the long ages of climate change, flood, and burial. They are the oldest complete hunting weapons ever found. Their presence shows that 400,000 years ago, human ancestors were already capable hunters, not merely scavengers on the edges of animal kills. The spears are long, each between 2.5 and 3 meters in length. Most are made from spruce, a wood chosen for its straight grain and strength. The shafts are carefully carved so that the heaviest part lies toward the front, giving balance for throwing. In design, they resemble modern javelins. Each has a pointed tip, sometimes carved from the base of the tree, where the wood is densest. This precision reveals both technical knowledge and foresight. Whoever shaped these weapons understood the qualities of wood, how it could be split, smoothed, and balanced. Some scholars suggest the tips may even have been hardened by fire, a technique that strengthens wood by reducing its moisture and compressing the fibers. The find came from a peat mine, where machines had cut through ancient layers. Archaeologists stepped in when traces of animal bones and artifacts were noticed. As the muddy ground was peeled back, a remarkable scene began to appear. Along the edge of an Ice Age lake, the remains of at least 10 horses were found. The bones bore cut marks, evidence of stone tools slicing meat from carcasses. Some bones were broken to reach marrow. Among them, scattered and embedded in layers of ancient soil, lay the wooden spears. The picture that emerged was one of a successful hunt, a group of early humans driving horses toward the water, striking them with spears, and then butchering them at the shore. The discovery is important not only for what it shows about hunting, but for what it tells about society. A hunt of horses requires coordination. Horses are fast and strong. To bring them down, hunters would need to work together, driving them toward a trap, surrounding them, and striking in unison. This suggests planning, communication, and shared effort. The Schöningen spears therefore reveal not only the existence of advanced tools, but also the presence of organized cooperation nearly 500,000 years ago. The landscape of Schöningen in that distant time was very different from today. Europe was locked in the rhythms of the Pleistocene, an age defined by cycles of ice and warmth. Glaciers advanced from the north, then retreated over and over again. At the time the spears were used, the climate was relatively mild, part of a warm interglacial phase. Open grasslands stretched around the lake. Herds of horses, deer, and bison grazed. Elephants and rhinoceroses wandered. Predators such as lions, wolves, and bears roamed the edges. For the humans who lived here, the landscape offered both danger and abundance. The makers of the spears are believed to be Homo heidelbergensis. This species lived in Europe, Africa, and Western Asia between 700,000 and 200,000 years ago. They are thought to be the common ancestors of both Neanderthals and modern humans. Homo heidelbergensis had large brains compared to earlier species, strong bodies adapted to cold, and the ability to shape tools with increasing complexity. At Schöningen, their skills are visible not only in stone flakes and scrapers, but in the very form of the wooden spears. The find confirms that these humans were not primitive scavengers, but capable hunters who relied on crafted weapons. Still, mysteries remain. No human bones have been found at Schöningen. We do not know exactly what these hunters looked like, how they organized their lives, or how long they stayed at this place. Were the spears lost after a single hunt? Or were they intentionally left behind? Were they buried in mud by accident? Or was the lakeshore a repeated site of hunting and butchery? Archaeologists pieced together clues from the placement of bones and tools, but the full story is hidden in silence. It is one of the many gaps that remain in the deep history of humankind. The preservation itself is extraordinary. The peat layers of the lake bed created an oxygen-poor environment, preventing decay. Over hundreds of millennia, glaciers advanced and retreated. Rivers shifted. Forests came and went. Yet beneath it all, the spears lay untouched, shielded from air, waiting. When they were lifted from the earth, still intact, it was as though time itself had folded back. For the first time, modern humans could hold in their hands the weapons of ancestors who lived nearly 500,000 years earlier. Beyond the local discovery, the spears provide a planetary perspective. At this time, the Earth was in the grip of the Pleistocene Ice Age. Great sheets of ice covered much of the north. Sea levels were lower. Coastlines stretched far beyond today's boundaries. Climatic shifts shaped the movements of animals and people alike. The interglacial warmth at Schöningen was temporary, a pause between long winters. In the great rhythm of planetary climate, humans were just one species finding a way to survive. Other finds of wooden tools are known, but they are rare and fragmentary. At Clacton-on-Sea in England, a sharpened wooden point was found, dated to around 400,000 years ago. At Leringen, also in Germany, a wooden spear was discovered lodged between the ribs of an extinct elephant, a dramatic reminder of early hunting skill. But only at Schöningen has a full set of spears, complete and preserved, been found. They form a unique window into a vanished world. As the story of Schöningen begins, we step into this world, the calm waters of the lake, the sound of herds moving across the grasslands, the rhythm of stone striking wood as tools shape weapons. In the silence of deep time, these spears wait, preserved by chance, to tell us that 400,000 years ago, humans already stood together, armed with knowledge, courage, and craft. The world of the Pleistocene is vast and shifting. It begins more than 2.5 million years ago, and it lasts until only 12,000 years ago. Within this span, the climate of Earth swings back and forth like a slow pendulum. Glacial ice sheets advance, covering northern lands with kilometers of frozen mass. Then, over thousands of years, the ice retreats, giving way to warmer phases where forests spread and grasslands return. These cycles leave their marks across continents, shaping the land, the rivers, and the survival of every living thing. In Europe, during the age of the Schöningen spears, the environment is part of this rhythm. The great glaciers are not at their maximum extent, but their presence is felt. To the north, ice presses down on Scandinavia. Cold winds sweep across the land, bringing harsh winters. But in Lower Saxony, the setting is milder for the moment. The climate is warmer than in the surrounding glacial periods. Lakes fill low valleys, wetlands spread across plains, and patches of forest grow where the soil allows. This is the interglacial world in which humans find abundance. Across these landscapes move great herds. Horses dominate, grazing in open meadows and along riverbanks. Their numbers are immense, for in this age they are not confined to stables or pastures, but roam in wild groups across all of Europe. Steppe bison graze nearby. Red deer and fallow deer browse among the edges of woodlands. Mammoths, with long curved tusks, wander slowly, stripping bark and breaking branches. Woolly rhinoceroses graze on low shrubs. These animals are the heartbeat of the ecosystem, feeding predators and people alike. Alongside the herds move the carnivores. Lions, larger than today's African lions, hunt in groups, striking at the weaker members of horse herds. Saber-toothed cats, already rare, still prowl in certain regions. Packs of wolves shadow the plains, patient and quick. Bears dominate the forests, claiming caves and riverbanks. For human ancestors, these animals are both rivals and threats. To hunt in such a world requires vigilance. To gather around fires at night demands courage, for in the dark the sounds of predators drift across the plains. The climate itself is not steady. Even within an interglacial tape, fluctuations occur. Summers may be warm, but winters remain long and severe. Snow lingers on hills. Rivers freeze. The cold shapes the rhythms of life. Herds migrate, following seasonal grasses. Humans follow in turn, adjusting their movements to the cycles of animals. In this way, climate dictates not only the shape of the land, but the pace of survival. Geologists trace these cycles in layers of sediment. In lakes and oceans, tiny shells of plankton record changes in temperature. In ice cores drilled from Greenland and Antarctica, bubbles of ancient air show the rise and fall of carbon dioxide, marking the swings between cold and warm. At Schöningen, the peat layers preserve pollen, seeds, and traces of plants that once grew nearby. From these, scientists reconstruct the world as it was, open landscapes dotted with forests of birch and pine, wetlands filled with reeds, shores trampled by herds of wild horses. The Schöningen site sits on the edge of one of these lakes. 400,000 years ago, its waters stretched wide, calm on still days, rippling when winds pressed across them. The lake was fed by rivers flowing from higher ground, bringing silt and nutrients. Along its shores, animals gathered to drink. The soft ground around the water made it easier for hunters to trap them. It is here, in this delicate balance of land and water, that the spears were found. Planetary shifts loom over this story. The ice sheets of the Pleistocene lock away immense volumes of water. When glaciers grow, sea levels drop, exposing land bridges, Coasts stretch far beyond their present lines. When ice melts, seas rise, drowning valleys and reshaping shorelines. These changes occur slowly on the human scale, yet they reshape entire continents. The people of Schöningen live within one of these warm pauses, unaware of the great ice that will return again. For them, the world seems full, abundant, and stable. But the Earth's deeper rhythm continues, indifferent to human time. One striking detail emerges from the archaeological record, the presence of species that no longer inhabit Europe. Straight-tusked elephants, larger than today's African elephants, wander the forests. Hippopotamuses even reach parts of northern Europe during warmer phases, swimming in rivers that today flow cold. These species reveal the extremes of climate oscillation. At times, Europe is more like Africa, filled with warmth and water. At other times, it is locked in cold, its plains frozen beneath snow and ice. Human survival depends on the ability to adapt, to shift strategies as the world changes around them. Yet many mysteries remain. How far did humans travel during these cycles? Did groups remain in regions like Schöningen for generations, or did they move constantly with the herds? Were there permanent camps, or only temporary sites along the lakes? Archaeology preserves traces of tools and bones, but the patterns of movement are hard to see. Wooden artifacts, hides, and shelters vanish with time. What survives is partial, a few spears, some cut-marked bones, scattered stone tools. From these fragments, scientists infer lifeways that once were whole and complete. Still, what is preserved is powerful. The Schöningen spears remind us that humans were not passive in this environment. They were not simply gatherers of scraps left by predators. They hunted large animals, coordinated with each other, and shaped tools for specific purposes. They lived not as bystanders, but as active participants in the great web of Pleistocene life. The planetary view gives scale to their existence. Across Africa, Asia, and Europe, early humans expand and adapt. Populations rise and fall with climate shifts. Genetic evidence shows that migrations occur, linking distant groups. In Africa, populations continue to evolve, leading eventually to Homo sapiens. In Europe, Homo heidelbergensis sets the stage for Neanderthals. In Asia, Denisovans leave only faint genetic echoes. All of this unfolds during the same glacial cycles that shape the world of Schöningen. Human history is inseparable from Earth's climate rhythm. To imagine this world is to stand on the edge of the lake, 400 millennia ago. The sun glints on the water. Horses graze on the far side, their manes lifted by the wind. In the distance, a line of dark forest presses against the horizon. The air is cool, carrying the scent of wet earth and grass. Somewhere beyond the ridge, ice waits, locked on northern lands, holding oceans in its grip. But here, for now, there is abundance. It is in this fragile moment of warmth between advancing glaciers that humans raise their spears and step forward into history. Hunters gather at the edge of the ancient lake. The ground is soft, trampled by the hooves of animals that come here to drink. The water reflects the pale light of a Pleistocene sky. In the distance, a herd of horses moves together, cautious but hungry, their ears flicking at every sound. This is the scene of Schöningen, 400,000 years ago. It is here that wooden spears, carefully shaped and balanced, are raised in human hands. For the first time in the archaeological record, a clear image emerges of organized hunters preparing to strike. The people who stand here belong to Homo heidelbergensis. They are not the earliest humans, nor yet the Neanderthals who will follow. They are a transitional form, strong-bodied and intelligent, adapted to survive in the unstable climates of Ice Age Europe. Their brains are large, nearly as large as those of modern humans. Their eyes are sharp, their movements practiced. They know this lake well. They know the habits of the horses that return again and again to its shores. They also know the properties of wood, of stone, and of fire. These hunters are more than opportunists. They are specialists, shaping their surroundings to secure life. Archaeology reveals the details. 8 spears were recovered from this site. Some were complete, stretching nearly 3 meters long, carved from the straight trunks of spruce. The wood was carefully selected. Each spear tapers to a point, carved from the dense base of the tree where the fibers are strongest. This makes the tip durable enough to pierce flesh and bone. The shafts are balanced, with the weight distributed toward the front. In design, they are like modern javelins. They can be thrown with force or used in thrusting at close range. This dual function reveals skill not only in making tools, but in imagining their use across different situations. The horse bones tell another part of the story. At least 10 individuals were killed here. Their skeletons show cut mark, thin lines left by stone tools scraping flesh away. Some bones are fractured, broken open to release marrow. The distribution of the remains suggests a large butchery site. Animals were likely driven toward the water, where soft ground trapped them, making them easier to strike. Once they fell, hunters moved quickly, using flint flakes to cut meat, stripping the carcasses, carrying portions away. In this scene, the spears are not symbolic. They are practical instruments of survival, central to the act of hunting. The presence of so many animals at once suggests a coordinated effort. One hunter alone could not bring down a horse, let alone a group. It would require cooperation, timing, and planning to surround the herd, to drive them toward the trap, to strike together at the moment of confusion. This is group strategy. It reveals communication, whether through gestures, vocal calls, or other signals. These hunters shared intentions. In the archaeological silence, words are absent, yet the pattern of bones and tools speaks of collective action. It is one of the earliest glimpses of organized hunting in the deep human past. A single detail deepens the picture. One of the spears appears smaller than the others, shorter and lighter. Some researchers suggest it may have belonged to a younger individual, perhaps even an adolescent. If true, this would show that knowledge of hunting was passed on within the group, that the next generation learned through direct participation. Others disagree, noting that variations in wood could account for the difference. The mystery remains, but it points to the social dimension of this find. The spears are not only tools, but markers of teaching, sharing, and generational continuity. The site also contains stone tools. But these are not large hand axes of earlier times, but flakes and scrapers. They were used to cut meat, to work hides, to shape wood. The combination of stone and wood tools reflects a flexible technology. Stone provides sharpness. Wood provides reach and strength. Together, they expand what humans can do. At Schöningen, this integration is visible in a single event. Stone flakes cutting horse meat. Wooden spears striking the kill. It is a portrait of technology in action 400 millennia ago. Mysteries remain about the hunters themselves. No human bones were found in association with the spears. Their bodies, their faces, their lives are absent. What they wore, how they sheltered, what they feared, all of this is unknown. Archaeologists can only infer from other sites. They likely used animal hides for warmth. They may have built temporary shelters from branches and turf. They probably used fire, though traces at Schöningen are debated. Without human remains, their physical presence is only implied, shadows behind the tools they left behind. Yet the planetary context gives weight to their achievement. These hunters live in a world where climate rules survival. Ice ages advance, forests retreat, grasslands open. Herds move with the seasons. Predators stalk the same prey. To hold spears in hand is to hold power against this uncertainty. It is to shift from scavenger to predator, from chance to choice. The Schöningen spears stand at the threshold of this transformation. They are not simply sticks of wood, but evidence that humans can shape their world deliberately, anticipating outcomes, bending the natural to human design. There is also the question of intention. Did the hunters plan this kill, or did they seize a sudden chance? Some argue that the location, the number of horses, and the tools suggest deliberate planning. Others note that opportunistic hunts could also leave such traces. The truth may lie between. In a landscape of constant change, humans likely adapted both ways, planning when possible, improvising when necessary. The spears show preparation, but the hunt itself may have combined both foresight and swift response. This blend of strategy and flexibility is what defines human survival. From a distance of 400,000 years, the scene is still. A group of hunters stands at the lake's edge. Horses fall, their bodies heavy in the mud. Stone flakes strike bone, cutting meat. Spears lie on the ground, some still embedded in the soil. Above, and the wind presses across open plains. Beyond the horizon, glaciers wait. The hunters cannot see them, but they live in their shadow. Each act of hunting, each shaped spear, is part of a long chain of adaptation to a changing planet. When archaeologists uncovered these weapons, they did more than add artifacts to a museum. They restored a chapter of human history once thought lost. For too long, the role of early humans was seen as secondary, dependent on luck or scavenging. The Schöningen spears overturn this view. They show that 400,000 years ago, humans were already hunters of large animals, capable of coordination, planning, and skill. In the quiet soil of a German meadow, the story of those hunters endures, preserved in wood, revealed in silence. The nature of the Schöningen spears becomes clear when one looks closely at their form. At first sight, they seem simple, long shafts of wood, pointed at one end, yet every detail reveals deliberate design. They are not branches stripped bare, nor rough sticks sharpened in haste. They are carefully shaped hunting weapons, crafted with precision nearly 500,000 years ago. Their discovery was unexpected, for wood almost never survives from such deep time. Yet here, buried in layers of wet peat and mud, they endured. And in their survival, they provide a direct connection to the minds and skills of their makers. The spears are made primarily from spruce, a conifer that grows tall and straight. One is carved from pine. Archaeologists note that the craftsmen selected the trunks with care. Each spear is between 2.5 and 3 meters in length, comparable to the height of a modern human or more. The shafts are smoothed, free of knots. Their surfaces worked until even. The tips are carved from the denser base of the tree, where wood fibers are compact and strong. This choice gives the weapon durability, allowing the point to penetrate animal hide and muscle without splintering. The result is a tool both elegant and effective, born of long experience with wood. Balance is another striking feature. The weight of the spears lies toward the front. This design makes them stable in flight, like a modern javelin. It allows them to be thrown with force, their points striking forward with accuracy. Yet the shafts are also thick enough to withstand pressure when used in thrusting. This dual purpose, throwing and stabbing, suggests versatility. A hunter could launch a spear from a distance, or hold it firmly to strike in close combat with large prey. Such foresight in design shows deep understanding of both wood and hunting. Microscopic analysis reveals further details. Under the surface, marks remain from the stone tools that shaped them. These striations show scraping, carving, and smoothing. The makers did not simply cut once and stop. They worked the wood in stages, testing balance, adjusting shape, and refining the point. Some researchers believe the tips may have been hardened by fire. Heat treatment drives out moisture and compresses the fibers, leaving a tougher surface. Although direct evidence of this is debated, experiments show that such techniques were within reach of early humans. If true, it would mean that 400,000 years ago, humans already combined fire with craftsmanship to produce better tools. One spear, slightly shorter than the rest, may have served a different purpose. Some suggest it was a throwing spear for a younger hunter. Others argue it could have been designed for different prey, perhaps smaller animals that required lighter weapons. This variation highlights flexibility, an ability to adapt tools to different tasks. It also hints at social learning, where knowledge of spearmaking passed from one individual to another, preserved across generations. The survival of these wooden weapons is itself remarkable. Normally, wood decays quickly. Rain, sun, and bacteria reduce it to fragments within decades. To last 400 millennia, special conditions are required. At Schöningen, the lake sediments created a protective environment. Waterlogged peat cut off oxygen, slowing decay. Over time, new layers of sediment sealed the spears deeper, locking them away from air. When archaeologists uncovered them, the wood was still intact, though fragile, as if time had paused. Conservation specialists worked carefully, soaking the artifacts in stabilizing solutions, ensuring they did not crumble when exposed to modern air. Thanks to these efforts, the spears now stand preserved, silent witnesses to a vanished world. The craftsmanship of the spears raises questions about the knowledge of Homo heidelbergensis. How much skill was needed to shape them? Were there specialists? Or did everyone learn the process? Did they carry unfinished shafts to camp, then work them slowly by firelight? The archaeological record gives no direct answers, yet the quality of the spears suggests practice. Such tools are not accidents. They are the result of repeated trials, shared experience, and memory carried across years. In this sense, the spears embody more than wood. They embody the continuity of culture. Comparisons with later periods deepen the story. Tens of thousands of years after Schöningen, Neanderthals crafted wooden spears too, though most have vanished with time. A famous find at Schöningen shows a spear embedded in the ribs of a straight-tusked elephant, proof of its deadly use. Yet the Schöningen weapons predate these by hundreds of thousands of years. Their existence extends the timeline of hunting technology far deeper into prehistory than once thought. They show that long before symbolic art or complex language, humans already shaped tools with vision and intent. Still, mysteries remain. Were the spears used only once or carried repeatedly? Were they treasured possessions, repaired and maintained, or discarded after each hunt? No direct evidence survives. Wooden tools rarely leave such traces. The few that do, like those at Schöningen, are extraordinary exception. They remind us that most of the material world of early humans, wooden digging sticks, woven baskets, hide shelters, has disappeared forever. What we know is only a fraction of what once existed. The spears are rare survivors of a much larger world of perishable technology, now silent and invisible. From a planetary perspective, the survival of these tools underscores the scale of deep time. While glaciers advanced and retreated, while seas rose and fell, while forests spread and shrank, the spears lay still. For 400 millennia they endured beneath the ground, untouched by storm or fire. Only by chance did machines cut into the peat, exposing the hidden layer. Their discovery is as much an accident of geology as a triumph of archaeology. The Earth's rhythms preserved them, waiting for a moment when human eyes could see them again. Holding such a spear today is to bridge immense distance. The weight rests in the hand, balanced, shaped, purposeful. It is the same object once carried by a hunter who lived before modern humans existed. In that moment, the past is not abstract. It is tangible, real, direct. The design of the spear speaks across time, of intelligence, of craft, of survival. It is a message carved in wood, carried through silence, across hundreds of thousands of years. At Schöningen, these spears tell us that early humans were not merely scraping by at the edges of survival. They were active, inventive, and skilled. They could plan hunts, coordinate groups, and build tools suited to their needs. They lived in a challenging world of shifting climate and dangerous predators, yet they met it with ingenuity. The spears are proof, resting in their simple form, of a profound truth. Human adaptation began not with metal or writing, but with wood shaped by stone, balanced in the hand, and aimed at the future. Along the margin of the Schöningen lake, another story unfolds. It is not only the spears that speak, but also the bones of animals scattered in the mud. The discovery of these remains transforms the site from a place of tools into a window on an actual hunt. Horses, once living creatures moving across the plains, are preserved in fragments of skeletons. They lie in layers of soil, their bones cut, broken, and rearranged by human hands 400,000 years ago. This is the butchery site, where hunters turned kill into nourishment, where stone and wood worked together to sustain life. Archaeologists uncovered at least 10 horses in one area. Their remains tell of an event that was both violent and practical. The bones are not random. They cluster together, concentrated near the shoreline of the lake. Many are incomplete, with signs of deliberate dismemberment. The marks of flint flakes are visible under close study. Thin striations run across the surfaces of ribs and long bones, evidence of meat sliced away. Deep cuts at joints show where limbs were removed. Some bones are fractured lengthwise. broken to reach the marrow hidden within. To modern eyes, these may seem like detail, but to archaeology they are the fingerprints of human action. The presence of so many horses at once suggests that this was more than chance. A single carcass might be explained by natural death, but a group of animals, butchered together, points toward an organized hunt. The location adds weight. The muddy ground of the lakeshore would have slowed animals, trapping them long enough for hunters to strike. Horses coming to drink were vulnerable, their legs sinking in wet earth. Spears could be thrown from a distance or thrust at close range when animals faltered. In this way, the shore became both hunting ground and butchery floor. The tools left behind add another dimension. Alongside the wooden spears, archaeologists found stone flakes and scrapers. These were used immediately after the kill. Sharp-edged flakes cut through muscle and hide. Scrapers cleaned skins, separating meat from bone. The association of tools with bones creates a vivid picture. Hunters kneeling by fallen animals, striking stone against wood, slicing flesh, working quickly before scavengers arrived. The butchery was not a single act, but a process, lasting hours or even days. The lake's edge became a temporary camp, a place of labor and sustenance. From this evidence, scientists infer the social nature of the hunt. To bring down 10 horses requires numbers. Cooperation is implied in every detail. Some individuals may have driven animals toward the water, while others waited with spears. After the kill, some cut meat, others carried portions away, still others perhaps guarded against predators. Such a scene cannot be proven directly, but the scale of the remains demands collective effort. Hunting at Schöningen was not solitary survival. It was communal action requiring planning, timing, and trust. The butchery marks also reveal knowledge of animal anatomy. Cuts appear at predictable places, joints, tendons, and muscle attachments where dismemberment is easiest. This shows that hunters knew precisely how to process carcasses. They did not strike at random, but with practiced skill. Knowledge of anatomy would have been passed from generation to generation, refined by experience. In this sense, the bones are not only evidence of meals, but of memory, teaching, and cultural transmission. Planetary forces again frame the scene. This hunt took place during a warm interglacial, when Europe's climate supported abundant life. The lake at Schöningen existed because glaciers had retreated, leaving water to fill low basins. Around its edges, reeds and grasses grew. Beyond, herds of horses and deer moved freely. This abundance was temporary, for the ice would return again in time. But in this window of warmth, hunters found opportunity. The butchery site reflects not only human action, but the rhythm of climate that allowed such gatherings of life. One detail deepens the mystery. Not all horse bones bear cut mark. Some remain untouched, as if certain carcasses were left behind. Why? Perhaps the hunters took only what they needed, abandoning the rest. Perhaps some animals died beyond reach, their bodies too difficult to recover from the mud. Or perhaps scavengers claimed them first. The incomplete record leaves space for uncertainty. Archaeology provides evidence, but not certainty of motives. What remains are questions hanging in silence across 400,000 years. Another unresolved issue is the length of occupation. Did the hunters remain here for days, feasting and working hides, or did they move quickly after the kill? The density of remains suggests concentrated activity, but without hearths or shelters preserved, the duration is unknown. Some argue for short-term use, a swift exploitation of opportunity. Others see signs of repeated visits, a favored hunting ground returned to again and again. The soil holds no clear answer. The debate continues, part of the ongoing dialogue between evidence and interpretation. The butchery site also demonstrates the dual role of the spears. In hunting, they struck at horses. In butchery, they may have served as levers, prying joints, holding carcasses steady. Their presence among the bones ties the two acts together. The moment of the hunt and the work that follows. They are not only weapons, but multi-purpose tools, central to both killing and processing. In this way, they embody the integration of hunting and survival, the full cycle from pursuit to consumption. When viewed in planetary scale, this scene at Schöningen is small. A group of hunters, a cluster of horses, a lakeshore marked by bones. Yet in human history, it is vast. It shows that by 400,000 years ago, humans were not dependent on scavenging or chance. They could organize hunts, take down large prey, and process them efficiently. They could feed groups, sustain themselves through skill. This moment, captured in soil, marks a step toward the long trajectory of human control over environment and food. The silence of the site is profound. There are no voices, no images, only bones, wood, and stone. Yet from these, an entire event can be reconstructed. Horses approach the lake. Hunters wait with spears. The animals falter in the mud. Weapons strike. Bodies fall. Stone flakes flash in quick hands. Cutting, slicing, breaking. Meat is carried away. The lake reflects the sky, still and indifferent. The bones sink slowly into mud, covered by water, forgotten by those who made them. Only after 400 millennia do they return, uncovered by human hands once more. The butchery site at Schöningen is therefore more than an archaeological curiosity. It is a testimony to skill, cooperation, and adaptation. It reminds us that deep in time, humans were already capable of shaping events, of altering the balance between predator and prey. It shows that survival was not random, but structured by knowledge and craft. The horses that fell at the lake's edge sustained lives long gone, yet in their bones, a record endures. Through them, we glimpse a moment of deep prehistory, a lakeshore, a hunt, and the quiet work of butchery beneath an ancient sky. The spears at Schöningen do not stand alone. They are part of a wider story of craft, of human ingenuity expressed through wood, stone, and fire. To shape such weapons requires more than raw strength. It requires patience, knowledge, and skill. It requires the ability to look at a tree and imagine what it can become. In this section, the focus turns to the making of tools in a harsh land, and to the role of craftsmanship in the survival of early humans. The raw materials were everywhere. Forests of spruce and pine lined the edges of lakes and rivers. Their trunks grew tall and straight, ideal for spears. Stone lay scattered across riverbeds and gravel plains, weathered into nodules of flint or quartzite. Both wood and stone were abundant, but abundance alone does not make tools. What mattered was the ability to select, to transform, and to refine. In this lies the essence of early human craft. To create a spear, a hunter first had to find the right tree. A straight trunk, without branches for several meters, offered the best material. Cutting it down was no easy task. Without metal, only stone edges could bite into wood. Hand axes and large flakes served as chopping tools, slowly working through bark and fibers. Once a trunk was felled, it was trimmed, its branches removed, its surface smoothed. The process took time, and it was labor shared by groups. Each stage reflects intention, an understanding that effort invested now would yield a weapon reliable later. Shaping the tip demanded particular care. The dense wood at the base of the trunk was chosen deliberately for its strength. Stone flakes scraped and carved, tapering the shaft into a point. Marks left behind show fine control, with repeated strokes guiding the form. The makers adjusted balance, trimming here, smoothing there, until the weapon lay straight in the hand. Such attention to detail suggests that craftsmanship was not casual. It was practiced, honed, and valued. Fire may also have played a role. Experiments by archaeologists show that wooden points can be hardened by carefully exposing them to flames. Heat drives out moisture, darkens the surface, and compresses fibers, making the tip more resistant to splintering. Some believe this technique was used at Schöningen, though direct traces are debated. If true, it would mean that humans here combined two great elements, stone and fire, to shape wood. The ability to control fire itself was already a profound achievement, offering warmth, protection, and cooking. To extend its use into tool-making shows innovation, an early blending of natural forces into craft. Stone tools were equally essential. At Schöningen, flakes and scrapers accompanied the spears. These were produced by striking cores with hammerstones, detaching sharp-edged fragments. Some flakes were only a few centimeters long, but their edges were razor-sharp. They could slice meat, cut hide, or shape wood. Scrapers, with retouched edges, worked skins into usable material for clothing or shelter. The variety of tools suggests a flexible approach. Rather than relying on a single implement, hunters carried toolkits, adapting each piece to immediate needs. In this lies the foundation of technological adaptability, a hallmark of human survival. The environment made such craft necessary. Europe in the Pleistocene was unforgiving. Winters were long, predators abundant, and food unpredictable. Without tools, survival would have been fragile. With them, humans expanded their reach. Spears allowed hunting of large animals. Scrapers turned hides into warmth. Fire hardened wood and cooked meat, unlocking more energy from food. The integration of these elements created a buffer against the harshness of climate. Craft was not decoration. It was life itself. One lesser-known detail from Schöningen adds depth to this story. Among the finds were not only spears, but also fragments of wooden shafts and possible throwing sticks. These suggest experimentation, variation in design, and perhaps a range of hunting strategies. The presence of multiple forms shows that humans were not locked into a single pattern. They explored different possibilities, testing what worked best. This spirit of trial and error is central to technological progress, even in prehistory. Mysteries remain about how knowledge was passed on. Did each individual learn by watching others? Or were there skilled teachers within the group? Did elders demonstrate how to carve a point? Or did younger members practice until they succeeded? The archaeological record cannot answer. Yet the uniform quality of the spears suggests shared standards. Techniques were consistent, implying a community of knowledge, a cultural tradition of craft. Such traditions, invisible in artifacts, are the true backbone of early technology. On a planetary scale, these acts of craft reflect a deeper story. As glaciers advanced and retreated, landscapes shifted, forests grew and shrank, rivers moved, and animals migrated. Yet within these changes, humans carried their skills with them. Wherever they went, they transformed natural materials into tools. The same hands that shaped a spear in Germany could have shaped digging sticks in Africa or shelters in Asia. Craft became a constant, a thread linking human groups across continents. It was the portable technology of survival carried in memory and practice, not just in objects. The durability of this craft is striking. Stone flakes still cut today as they did then. Wooden spears, though rare in preservation, remain balanced and functional. Experiments with replicas show that they can be thrown more than 20 meters, penetrating targets with lethal force. Such experiments confirm what archaeology suggests. These were not crude attempts, but effective weapons, capable of sustaining real hunts. The people of Schöningen were masters of their craft, not beginners fumbling with tools. Still, much is hidden. Wooden artifacts beyond Schöningen have almost entirely vanished. For every spear preserved in peat, thousands have disappeared forever. This gap leaves us with an incomplete view, one skewed towards stone, which survives more easily. Archaeologists often speak of a Stone Age, but the truth is more complex. Much of early human life was shaped by wood, fiber, and hide, materials that rarely endure. The spears at Schöningen are reminders of this lost world, where craft extended far beyond what the earth has chosen to preserve. The image that emerges is quiet but powerful. A group of humans sits by a fire. Sparks rise into the night. In their hands are wooden shafts, slowly scraped into points. Stone flakes strike against wood, leaving fine marks. The hunters test balance, holding each spear upright, adjusting weight. The work takes time, but patience is part of survival. Around them, the forest waits. The lake lies still. The climate presses its rhythm of cold and warmth. In this setting, craft is not only a means of making tools, but a rhythm of life itself. When we look at the Schöningen spears today, we see more than wood. We see the imprint of human thought, the translation of imagination into form. We see a bridge between natural resource and cultural artifact. We see a moment when hands and minds work together to create instruments of survival. In their straight shafts and balanced points lies a story of adaptation, of resilience, and of ingenuity. The spears are not only weapons, they are symbols of craft, preserved against all odds, carrying across 400,000 years the quiet testimony of human skill. The spears of Schöningen belong not to the depths of a frozen age, but to a rare interval of warmth. To understand them fully, one must place them within the long rhythm of Pleistocene climate. For more than 2 million years, Earth is gripped by cycles of ice and thaw. Glaciers advance across northern continents, then retreat again, leaving landscapes reshaped. These swings are slow on the human scale, but relentless over generations. At Schöningen, the spears are dated to a warm interglacial period when ice retreated and life spread widely across Europe. It is within this window of abundance that human hunters thrived. An interglacial brings transformation. Forests expand across plains that had once been tundra. Rivers run free of ice, filling valleys and basins. Lakes, like the one at Schöningen, grow large and stable, lined with reeds and grasses. The air softens, summers stretch longer, winters ease, plants flourish, and with them, animals. Herds of horses graze in open meadows. Red deer browse at forest edges. Bison wander in groups, while elephants and rhinoceroses trample pathways through the woods. Predators shadow them, lions, wolves, and bears, each adapted to the bounty of warmer years. For humans, this abundance means opportunity. Food is more accessible, water is plentiful, and survival is less precarious than in the grip of glacial cold. Yet, interglacials are temporary. Climate records from ice cores and ocean sediments show their fleeting nature. Typically, they last only a few tens of thousands of years, brief pauses within longer ages of ice. For the hunters of Schöningen, this truth would not be visible. To them, the world may have seemed stable, abundant, and permanent. Yet geologists know the warmth was only one phase in the greater cycle. Sooner or later, glaciers would advance again, forests would shrink, and grasslands would harden into steppe. Human groups living in this time adapted within a moving frame, never far from the reach of cold. The soil at Schöningen preserves traces of this climate. Pollen grains, trapped in peat, reveal the kinds of plants that grew around the lake. Birch, pine, and alder mark cooler conditions, while oak and hazel suggest warmer stretches. Seeds, wood fragments, and microscopic remains all contribute to the reconstruction of the environment. Together, they paint a picture of a mosaic landscape, patches of forest interspersed with open grassland, wetlands at low points, and wide meadows where herds could graze. It is in this setting that hunters raised their spears, balancing their lives between forest shelter and open chase. One lesser-known detail is the presence of small animals, often overlooked in grand reconstructions. Beavers built dams along rivers. Waterfowl nested in reed beds. Fish swam in the lake itself, their bones sometimes preserved in sediments. These creatures also mattered to humans. They offered food, materials, and cues about seasonal change. While large game dominates the archaeological imagination, smaller resources formed part of daily survival. Their traces remind us that the environment was complex, not only defined by great hunts, but also by the quieter rhythms of gathering, fishing, and opportunistic foraging. Mysteries remain about the exact climate conditions during the use of the spears. Some scientists debate whether the Schöningen horizon represents the warm peak of an interglacial or a slightly cooler phase within it. The answer matters, for it shapes how we interpret the challenges faced by the hunters. If conditions were mild, food was abundant. If cooler, survival may have required greater planning. Sediment cores provide data, but interpretation is difficult. Layers shift. Organic material decays. Signals overlap. The debate continues, reminding us that even with modern science, the past resists full clarity. On a planetary scale, the interglacial at Schöningen is part of a wider pattern. Earth's orbit shifts slowly over time, its tilt and shape changing in cycles known as Milankovitch cycles. These variations alter the amount of solar energy reaching the northern hemisphere, triggering the advance and retreat of ice sheets. When sunlight increases, glaciers melt back, releasing water into oceans, raising sea levels. When it decreases, ice grows, locking water on land. The hunters at Schöningen lived within one such phase, when orbital patterns favored warmth. Unaware of the celestial mechanics above them, they simply lived within the world they knew, abundant, rich, and green. The presence of water was especially important. Lakes and rivers acted as magnets for life. Animals came to drink. Fish lived in their depths. Plants flourished on their banks. For humans, these places were both larder and trap. To hunt near a lake was to intercept animals at their most vulnerable. It is no accident that the spears were found on a lake shore. The hunters had learned the patterns of their prey. They chose locations where animals would gather, exploiting the environment's rhythms for survival. Yet even in abundance, danger lingered. Warm phases allowed predators to thrive as well. Lions and wolves hunted in packs, capable of threatening humans. Bears defended territories and dens. Even elephants and rhinoceroses posed risks. To live in this interglacial world required constant vigilance. Spears served not only in hunts, but in defense. Cooperation, fire, and camp organization would have been as vital as weaponry. The climate gave life, but it also supported powerful rivals. One might imagine the sensory world of this interglacial. The calls of birds echoed across wetlands. The smell of damp earth and pine filled the air. Herds stampeded, raising dust and trembling ground. The sharp crack of stone on wood rang out as spears were shaped by firelight. At night, the sky stretched vast and unpolluted, filled with stars. These impressions are not preserved in soil, but they can be inferred from the context. They remind us that the interglacial was not an abstract climate phase, but a lived reality filled with sights, sounds, and rhythms that shaped human experience. The temporary warmth also had consequences for movement. As forests grew and rivers swelled, migration routes shifted. Humans followed herds into new areas, adapting to unfamiliar terrain. This mobility is part of the human story. Groups at Schöningen may have traveled far, carrying spears and knowledge across valleys and ridges. The interglacial was not only a pause in ice, but a corridor for expansion. It opened possibilities, even as it foreshadowed challenges when cold returned. Ultimately, the climate of Schöningen reminds us that human history is inseparable from Earth's rhythms. The spears belong to a warm moment, preserved by chance in peat. But behind them lies a deeper cycle of ice advancing and retreating, of warmth returning and fading. The hunters lived not at the mercy of a single season, but within a planetary pulse that stretched across millennia. Their survival, their craft, their hunts were all framed by this larger rhythm. Today, as we look back, the stillness of the preserved spears contrasts with the dynamism of their world. The wood endures, but the climate that shaped it has long since shifted. Glaciers returned, forests fell, lakes dried, animals vanished. Yet in this one warm interglacial, humans at Schöningen thrived. They stood at the water's edge, spears in hand, living within abundance, unknowing that the ice would one day return. The spears remain as testimony to that fleeting warmth, preserved in silence, carrying across 400,000 years the memory of an interglacial world. The spears of Schöningen raise an enduring question: who held them? No human bones were recovered at the site, no teeth, no fragments of skull to provide a direct answer. Yet archaeology, paleoanthropology, and comparative evidence converge to suggest that the makers and wielders of these weapons were members of Homo heidelbergensis. To consider their presence is to enter the middle chapters of human evolution, between the earliest explorers of the genus Homo and the later Neanderthals and modern humans who would follow. Homo heidelbergensis first appears in the fossil record around 700,000 years ago. Their remains are found across Africa, Europe, and Western Asia. They are known from sites such as Mauer in Germany, Petralona in Greece, Bodo in Ethiopia, and Atapuerca in Spain. Their bones reveal a species both archaic and advanced. They retain the strong brows and heavy jaws of earlier humans, yet their brain size approaches that of modern people. Estimates place it between 1,100 and 1,400 cubic centimeters, larger than Homo erectus and overlapping with later Homo sapiens. Their bodies are robust, well adapted to the physical demands of a variable climate and strenuous life. In Europe, Homo heidelbergensis is widely regarded as the ancestor of Neanderthals. Genetic and anatomical evidence points to this lineage. In Africa, populations of the same species may have given rise to modern humans. In this sense, they are a pivotal branch, standing near the root of two great human lineages. Their presence at Schöningen therefore represents not only a moment of hunting, but a stage in the deep ancestry of both Neanderthals and ourselves. What did they look like? Reconstructions from skulls suggest tall, broad-bodied individuals with strong limbs and thick bones. They were built to withstand cold climates, yet also lived in warmer intervals. Their faces were long, with projecting midsections and strong jaws. They lacked the delicate chins of modern humans, but their foreheads were higher than those of Homo erectus. Their bodies, averaging perhaps 1.75 meters in height for males and somewhat less for females, carried the strength needed to fell trees, shape spears, and hunt large animals. Their hands, fully modern in form, could grip and manipulate with precision, capable of both power and finesse. At Schöningen, the absence of skeletal remains leaves mystery. The tools are clear, but the makers are shadows inferred from elsewhere. Yet the spears themselves embody qualities that match Homo heidelbergensis: foresight, skill, cooperation. To select wood, to shape it with stone, to balance weight for throwing, these are acts that require planning and intelligence. The cut marks on horse bones suggest organized hunting, not random scavenging. The evidence aligns with what is known of Homo heidelbergensis at other sites, capable, adaptive humans, experimenting with new strategies of survival. A lesser-known detail is that wooden artifacts associated with this species are not unique to Schöningen. In England, at Clacton-on-Sea, a single wooden point, likely a spear tip, was found in sediments of similar age. Though less complete, it confirms that Homo heidelbergensis used wood as a regular material, not as a rare experiment. At Leringen in Germany, a later find of a spear embedded in the ribs of an elephant may also belong to their descendants. Together, these discoveries expand the picture. Schöningen is exceptional in preservation, but not in invention. It captures a tradition that was likely widespread, though invisible in most of the archaeological record. Still, many mysteries remain unresolved. Did these humans use language or uttira only gestures and sounds? Were their social groups small bands or larger communities tied together across regions? Did they bury their dead or leave them to the elements? Traces at Atapuerca suggest some form of deliberate body deposition, but interpretations vary. At Schöningen, silence dominates. The spears tell us of hunting, but not of speech, song, or belief. We are left with material skill, but not the inner life. The absence of bones means we cannot know their faces, their health, or their lifespans. The evidence is powerful, yet incomplete. On a planetary scale, Homo heidelbergensis was widespread. Their fossils stretch from southern Africa to northern Europe, from the Mediterranean to China. They adapted to environments ranging from forests to steppes, from warm savannas to glacial margins. Their ability to endure across such varied conditions speaks of flexibility. They were not bound to a single niche, but expanded across continents, experimenting with tools, fire, and hunting. In them, we see the roots of the global adaptability that would later define modern humans. One striking element is their relationship to fire. At sites such as Beech's Pit in England and Terra Amata in France, traces of hearths suggest that Homo heidelbergensis could control flame. Charcoal fragments, burned stones, and ash lenses indicate repeated use. If fire was indeed mastered by this time, then the Schöningen hunters may have warmed themselves after the hunt, cooked meat to make it more digestible, and hardened wooden spear tips in the glow of flames. Fire was not just warmth, but technology, altering diet, tool-making, and social life. Though debated in detail, the evidence increasingly points toward mastery of fire by this species. The spears themselves, then, are not isolated achievements. They are part of a suite of behaviors that include hunting, tool-making, and perhaps fire use. They represent a stage in human evolution where intelligence and culture were deepening, laying the groundwork for the symbolic and artistic expressions that would come much later. In the strong arms that wielded them lies the continuity of human craft. In the minds that shaped them lies the continuity of human thought. To picture the hunters of Schöningen is to imagine figures both familiar and strange. They walk upright, with bodies like ours, gripping tools as we would. Yet their faces are heavy-browed, their voices perhaps rougher, their ways of life embedded in rhythms long forgotten. They are not us, yet they are not distant either. They stand on the threshold, bridging deep past and nearer present. Their spears, preserved in silence, are the tangible trace of that bridge. Today, as the spears rest in museum cases, the question of their makers lingers. We may never find their bones at Schöningen. We may never know their names, their family bonds, or their individual stories, but in each balanced shaft, in each cut mark on horsebone, in each flake of stone, the presence of Homo heidelbergensis is felt. They lived here, they hunted here, they thrived here, they carried their craft into a changing world, adapting to climates and landscapes with resilience. And in their survival, they left behind the tools that connect us to their time. The evidence at Schöningen does more than describe weapons and carcasses. It points toward the social fabric that made such hunts possible. To face herds of horses armed only with wooden spears required more than individual strength. It demanded cooperation, the placement of horse remains, the number of spears, and the clustering of stone tools all suggest group effort. Hunting was not a solitary pursuit here, but a collective action, coordinated and shared. Large animals like horses are swift and strong. A single hunter, no matter how skilled, could rarely bring one down. But with many working together, the odds changed. Some could drive the herd toward the lakeshore. Others could wait in ambush with spears ready, while still others could close in once the animals stumbled in mud. The distribution of bones, clustered near the water, supports this view. It shows that horses were likely trapped and dispatched in numbers, an outcome that speaks to planning cooperation transformed the hunt from dangerous chance into manageable success. Such cooperation rests on communication. We do not know whether Homo heidelbergensis possessed language as we understand it, but coordination required signals of some kind. Perhaps sharp calls or patterned gestures guided movement. Perhaps shared rhythms, honed over repeated hunts, allowed group members to anticipate each other's actions. Archaeology cannot preserve sound or gesture, but the successful outcome speaks of understanding. The cut-marked bones are silent testimony to a conversation long vanished. One lesser-known detail from Schöningen supports the idea of group behavior, the presence of multiple spears with near-identical design. This uniformity implies shared knowledge, a cultural standard of craftsmanship. Each spear was not unique, but part of a pattern, suggesting that many individuals within the group possessed the skills to make them. In turn, this reflects teaching and learning, continuity across generations. A community that shares techniques also shares responsibility for survival. Craft and cooperation were not separate, but intertwined. The butchery of 10 horses reveals another layer of collective effort. Once animals were killed, the work of processing them began. Meat had to be sliced, hides stripped, bones broken for marrow. One individual could not accomplish this quickly enough before spoilage or scavengers arrived. Groups working together ensured efficiency. Some knelt with stone flakes, others carried portions away, perhaps to a temporary camp. In this way, hunting extended beyond the moment of the kill into hours or days of coordinated labor. Every stage, from pursuit to butchery, reinforced social bonds. Mysteries remain about the exact size and structure of these groups. Were they small bands of a few families, or larger communities temporarily gathered? Did individuals specialize in roles, hunters, butchers, guards, or did all share tasks equally? The archaeological record cannot answer. Yet the scale of the kill suggests more than a handful of participants. Cooperative hunting of this kind implies a level of organization comparable to later humans. It marks a step in the evolution of social complexity. The risks of hunting also required trust. A charging horse could injure or kill a hunter. Predators drawn by blood could attack. In such settings, survival depended on individuals standing together, defending one another. Spears may have been raised not only against prey but against wolves or lions drawn to the scene. The decision to hunt as a group meant sharing risk as well as reward. This mutual reliance is a foundation of human society, visible here in deep prehistory. On a planetary scale, cooperation reflects adaptation to an uncertain world. Climate cycles shifted resources unpredictably. In cold phases, food grew scarce, demanding shared effort to secure it. In warm phases, abundance still required coordination to exploit. Across continents, early humans adapted by relying on each other. Cooperation became a constant, shaping the trajectory of human evolution. The spears of Schöningen embody this principle, tools made for individual use but successful only in group action. A striking parallel can be drawn with predator behavior. Lions hunt cooperatively. Wolves pursue prey in packs. Even chimpanzees coordinate in capturing monkeys. Humans stand within this continuum, but with a difference: the scale of their prey, the planning implied, and the use of crafted weapons place them apart. At Schöningen, cooperation was not simply instinctive, it was structured, planned, and mediated through technology. This blend of social strategy and tool use set humans on a distinct path. Still, questions linger. Did groups share food equally? Or did certain individuals control distribution? Was meat stored, smoked, or shared immediately? Did children and elders participate, or remain at safer distances? No traces survive of hearths, storage pits, or camps at the site. Without such evidence, the social dynamics remain hidden. The silence of the record forces caution. Yet the broader context of human evolution suggests that sharing and teaching were central. Knowledge of hunting techniques, crafting skills, and environmental cues could not survive without transmission. Cooperation extended beyond the hunt itself into the flow of culture. One lesser-known implication of the site is the potential for social memory. To return to the same lakeshore again and again implies recognition of place, perhaps even tradition. Generations may have gathered here, repeating hunts, passing down knowledge of terrain and prey. Such continuity binds communities not only through immediate action, but through time. The landscape itself becomes part of the cooperative network, remembered and revisited across decades. The spears, preserved in peat, are echoes of such enduring bonds. Planetary changes framed these human interactions. As interglacials warmed the land, herds expanded, offering chances for large kills. When cold returned, cooperation may have been even more vital, with groups depending on shared hunts to secure limited resources. The rhythm of climate thus wove itself into the rhythm of social life. Cooperation was not optional, but essential, a survival strategy written into the fabric of human existence. The vision that emerges is one of quiet strength. A band of hunters stands together at the lakeshore. They move as one, signaling, driving horses toward mud. Spears fly, thrusts strike, animals fall. Soon the air is filled with the sound of cutting, the smell of blood and hide. The group works quickly, each playing a part. Meat is piled, hides stretched, bones cracked. Children watch, learning. Elders advise, remembering. This is not chaos, but choreography, practiced and repeated. A rhythm of life sustained by trust and cooperation. The spears of Schöningen are therefore more than artifacts of wood. They are emblems of human sociality. Their straight shafts and balanced weight reveal craft, but their presence among clustered bones reveals something deeper, the power of working together. In this cooperation lies the seed of what would later define humanity: shared effort, shared knowledge, shared survival. The spears endure, silent but eloquent, reminders that from the very beginning, humans lived not alone, but in groups bound by cooperation. Beyond the horses, i.e. the spears, and the tools, the Schöningen site holds quieter traces, subtle fragments that hint at the wider life of its makers. Archaeologists uncovered not only weapons and bones, but also remnants of firewood, scattered flakes from tool production, and signs of repeated activity. Together, these fragments suggest that the lake shore was more than a hunting ground. It was also a place of temporary camp, where early humans paused, gathered, and organized their days within the rhythm of the landscape. The first clue lies in the small pieces of wood preserved alongside the spears. Some were cut, some charred, others broken in ways that suggest deliberate use. They are not trees fallen by chance. Their context, mingled with stone flakes and animal bones, implies that they were collected as firewood. If true, this would mean that hunters tended fires here, not only to cook or warm themselves, but also to process materials. Fire may have hardened spear tips, softened hides, or warded off predators. Each use reinforced the role of fire as a central element in human life. Even in the absence of clear hearths, the wood fragments are quiet evidence of its presence. Stone debris adds another layer. Many flakes are not simply tools used in butchery, but the byproducts of tool-making. This indicates that humans brought raw stone to the site and shaped it on the spot. Striking flakes from cores allowed them to renew cutting edges as needed, adjusting to the demands of the hunt and processing. The scattered pieces mark where someone knelt, hammerstone in hand, shaping fresh blades. In this way, the lakeshore became both workshop and workplace, a space where craft and subsistence merged. The rhythms of such activity point to seasonal patterns. Herd animals like horses and bison move with the seasons, following grass growth. Hunters, in turn, followed them. The presence of multiple animals and tools at Schöningen suggests that this site was visited more than once, perhaps during regular migrations. It may have served as a predictable point on a yearly cycle, a place where water, prey, and raw materials converged. In this sense, Schöningen was not random but embedded in the seasonal calendar of human groups. Temporary shelters may also have stood nearby. No direct traces survive. Wood and hide vanish over millennia, but parallels from later sites suggest the possibility. Simple frames of branches, covered with hides or vegetation, could have offered protection from wind or rain. Camps may have been small, just a few shelters clustered together, providing space for families to rest, cook, and prepare tools. Though invisible in the archaeological record, such structures are consistent with the evidence of repeated occupation. They remind us that hunting was only part of life. Resting, repairing, and socializing were equally important. The social dimensions of such a camp are profound. A lakeshore gathering point would have brought together hunters, toolmakers, elders, children, and perhaps those unable to hunt. Tasks would be shared. Some shaped wood, others prepared food, still others tended fires. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next in the act of participation. Children learned by watching, trying, imitating. Elders guided through memory and instruction. In this way, culture was carried not in words written or carved, but in living practice, repeated at places like Schöningen. A lesser-known detail from the site supports this picture: traces of small, worked sticks that may have been used as throwing sticks or digging tools. Though fragmentary, they suggest that wooden technology extended beyond spears. Such tools could have aided in hunting birds, small game, or in gathering edible roots and tubers. They expand the view of life here beyond the dramatic hunt of horses to the quieter, everyday tasks of survival. The people of Schöningen were versatile, using multiple strategies to secure food, not solely dependent on large kills. Yet mysteries remain. Did humans remain at the lake for days after the hunt? Or did they leave quickly, burdened with meat, moving toward safer places to consume it? Were fires lit openly on the ground, or contained within simple hearths? Did groups from different regions meet here, or was the site used only by a single band? The evidence does not answer. Archaeologists debate these questions, piecing together clues from sediments, charcoal fragments, and the distribution of artifacts. Each possibility offers a different image of life, either brief, opportunistic visits, or longer, more settled encampments. On a planetary scale, such camps mark the beginnings of human settlement, long before villages or agriculture. They are temporary, fragile, and mobile, yet they embody the same principle: humans gathering in specific places, shaping landscapes through repeated use. The Schöningen lakeshore may not have held permanent structures, but its repeated occupation left layers of evidence. Over time, such repeated use is what eventually gives rise to stable settlements. Schöningen is an early echo of this long trajectory. The wider climate framed these rhythms. During the interglacial warmth, resources were abundant, making seasonal camps viable. Water did not freeze year-round, plants grew, and animals flourished. When ice advanced, such places may have been abandoned, forcing humans to retreat southward. Thus, the camp at Schöningen was not timeless but bound to climate phases. Its survival in peat is a coincidence of timing. Humans came here when the land was fertile, and the sediments preserved their traces across ages. The camp also reflects the integration of different technologies. Spears and stone tools are the most visible, but firewood and possible shelters suggest a broader toolkit. Each element reinforced the others. Fire hardened tools and cooked food. Stone cut wood and hide. Wood provided both weapons and fuel. Together, they formed a web of interdependent practices, sustaining human groups in demanding environments. At Schöningen, this integration is preserved in fragments, allowing us to glimpse the whole. The social bonds of such camps are as important as the tools. Cooperation extended beyond the hunt into daily life. Sharing food, warmth, and tasks built trust. Conflict may have arisen, but survival demanded resolution. In this sense, the camp was more than a physical space. It was a social arena where identities were formed, traditions maintained, and communities sustained. The spears and bones may dominate the record, but behind them lay conversations, gestures, and bonds that cannot be seen yet were essential. One might imagine the scene. Fires flicker by the water's edge, smoke drifting into the evening sky, spears lean against branches, hides are stretched on frames, scraped clean with stone tools. Children play at the margins, imitating spear thrusts with small sticks. Elders rest, recalling earlier hunts. The air is filled with the smell of roasting meat, the rhythm of stone striking wood, the quiet murmur of voices. This is not only a hunting ground, but a place of life, however temporary, sustained by craft, cooperation, and memory. The camp at Schöningen, fragile and impermanent, was part of a broader pattern repeated across continents. Wherever early humans went, they carried with them not only tools but traditions of gathering, sharing, and pausing in chosen places. Most traces of such camps are lost, yet at Schöningen, the combination of peat, mud, and chance preserved a rare glimpse. It is a reminder that human history is not written only in moments of hunt or invention, but also in the quieter rhythms of daily life, fires lit, meals shared, shelters raised, and knowledge passed on beneath ancient skies. The Schöningen spears and horse bones tell a vivid story of hunting and skill, yet one absence defines the site, the people themselves. No human bones, no skull fragments, no teeth have been found in direct association with the spears. The hunters left their tools, their cut mark, their traces of firewood, but their own bodies are missing. This silence raises one of the enduring mysteries of the site. Who exactly were they? What did they look like? And where did they go? Archaeologists attribute the site to Homo heidelbergensis, but this is an inference built on comparison. Fossils of this species are known from across Europe and Africa, but not from Schöningen itself. The absence of skeletal remains makes direct certainty impossible. Instead, the people of the spears are imagined through fragments found elsewhere: skulls from Petrolona in Greece, mandibles from Mauer in Germany, crania from Bodo in Ethiopia. Each piece helps construct a picture: large-brained, robust-bodied humans, transitional between earlier Homo erectus and later Neanderthals. At Schöningen, the tools match their capabilities, but the makers themselves remain shadows. The lack of bones is not surprising in one sense. Human remains are rare in the archaeological record of this age. Bodies left in the open are quickly scattered by scavengers, broken by weather, and lost to soil. Only under special conditions, burial in caves, rapid sediment cover, or mineralization, do bones survive for hundreds of thousands of years. At Schöningen, the peat preserved wood and animal bones, but not the more fragile traces of human bodies. The hunters may have left the site soon after the kill, carrying their dead elsewhere, or simply not dying here at all. Their absence reflects both chance and the fragility of bone. Still, the silence is striking. The spears provide a direct, tangible link to human hands. Their balance, their carved points, their careful shaping all speak of minds and bodies behind them. Yet those minds and bodies remain invisible. Archaeologists can measure the length of a spear, but not the height of its maker. They can trace the cut marks on horsebone, but not the hand that struck the blow. This gap is at once frustrating and fascinating. It reminds us of how much of human history remains unseen, how much must be reconstructed from fragments. One lesser-known detail adds to the puzzle. At other sites of similar age, such as Atapuerca in Spain, human fossils are found in abundance. In the Cima de los Huesos cave, over 6,000 bones from at least 28 individuals have been uncovered, dating to roughly the same period. These fossils show features transitional toward Neanderthals. Their presence contrasts with the emptiness of Schöningen. Why are the hunters missing here? Was the site only a hunting and butchery ground, never a living space where death might occur? Or were bodies deliberately placed elsewhere, reflecting practices of disposal we can only guess at? The comparison highlights how uneven the record is, abundant at one place, absent at another. Mysteries also surround the cognitive world of these hunters. Without skeletal remains, especially skulls, we cannot measure their exact brain size or analyze inner structures. Without bones, we cannot know their health, their injuries, or their lifespans. Were they long-lived or short-lived? Did they suffer from disease or heal from wounds with group support? At other sites, evidence of healed fractures suggests care within groups. But at Schöningen, the hunters' inner lives are hidden, erased by time. Their voices, gestures, and beliefs are gone. Only their tools remain as echoes. On a planetary scale, this absence is not unusual. Across most of the deep past, humans appear only through artifact, not bones, wooden spears, stone flakes, fire traces. These are the durable signals of their presence. The people themselves vanish, leaving only their work. The Schöningen site illustrates this vividly. We know more about the horses they killed than about the hunters themselves. The prey is preserved in bone, the tools in wood, but the predators are missing. The imbalance reminds us how partial the archaeological record is. How much of human history is inferred rather than directly seen. Some researchers have speculated that the absence of remains could itself reflect behavior. Perhaps Homo heidelbergensis disposed of their dead deliberately, away from living and hunting sites. At Cima de los Huesos, bodies appear to have been placed intentionally in a pit, though the meaning is debated. Could similar practices explain why no bodies are found at Schöningen? We cannot know. But the possibility lingers. If true, it would suggest early forms of ritual or at least concern for the dead. If not, the absence may be nothing more than coincidence. The debate remains unresolved, a reminder of the limits of evidence. A lesser-noted aspect of this mystery is what it reveals about preservation bias. Archaeology often privileges stone over bone, bone over wood, wood over flesh. What survives is not what was most important to life, but what resists decay. At Schöningen, unusual conditions preserved wood, giving us rare insight into wooden technology. But without equally rare conditions, human bodies disappeared. Thus, the record is skewed. The hunter's absence is not a reflection of their insignificance, but of the fragile nature of human remains. The silence of the record is shaped as much by geology as by history, yet the absence also fuels imagination. To hold a Schöningen spear today is to sense the missing presence of its maker. The balance in the hand, the carved point, the symmetry, all demand a craftsman. Behind each tool lies a person, tall, strong, thinking, moving across the lake shore 400 millennia ago. We may never know their face, but their skill is visible. The spears are their fingerprints, pressed into wood instead of skin. In this sense, the absence of bones does not erase them entirely. They live in the objects they shaped. On a planetary timescale, the missing hunters remind us of the fragility of memory. Earth's surface is restless, glaciers advance, rivers shift, sediments bury and erode. Most traces of human life vanish within a few centuries. Only under extraordinary conditions do they endure for millennia. The Schöningen spears survived by accident, trapped in peat. The hunters did not. Their absence is not unusual, but it is stark. It underlines how miraculous each survival is, how precarious our glimpses into deep time remain. Imagining the hunters, one can picture their presence without their bones. A group gathers at the lake, spears in hand. They drive horses toward mud, strike, and bring them down. They butcher carcasses, scrape hides, build fires. Children watch, learning. Elders advise, remembering. When the hunt is finished, they move on, leaving behind bones, flakes, and broken wood. Their footprints vanish in mud, their bodies vanish in time, but the spears sink deeper, preserved in silence. What remains is a partial scene, incomplete yet powerful. The mystery of Schöningen lies in this incompleteness. We know the tools, but not the tool makers. We know the prey, but not the predators. We know the acts, but not the actors. This absence leaves questions unanswered. Who were they? How did they live? What did they believe? Perhaps future discoveries will bring their bones to light, filling the gap. Until then, the hunters remain unseen, their presence felt only through the wooden spears they left behind. The Schöningen spears, though unique in their completeness, are part of a wider story of wooden weapons scattered across deep prehistory. For most of the human past, wood was the material most often used, yet it rarely survives. Its fragility means that only in rare, waterlogged places do we catch glimpses of this hidden world. By comparing Schöningen with other finds, we begin to see that the shaping of wooden hunting tools was not an isolated experiment, but a widespread practice that stretched across regions and ages. One of the earliest pieces of evidence comes from Clacton-on-Sea in England. Discovered in 1911, it is a single wooden point, sharpened at one end. At first, many doubted whether it was truly a weapon. Some thought it might have been a natural stick shaped by accident, but its deliberate form and worked surface are now widely accepted. Dating to around 400,000 years ago, the Clacton point aligns closely in time with Schöningen. Together, they confirm that wooden hunting tools were known across Europe during this period. Though the Clacton point is incomplete, its presence suggests a tradition of spear-making stretching beyond Germany. Another famous discovery comes from Schöningen, also in Germany. In 1948, the skeleton of a straight-tusked elephant was uncovered in a gravel pit. Between its ribs lay a wooden spear, 2.4 meters long, its point hardened by fire. The context was unmistakable. This was not a random association, but evidence of humans confronting and killing one of the largest animals of the Ice Age. The Schöningen spear is younger than Schöningen, dating to roughly 120,000 years ago, but it shows continuity. Neanderthals, likely descendants of Homo heidelbergensis, were still crafting and using wooden weapons in much the same way. Beyond Europe, traces are rarer but significant. At Kalambo Falls in Zambia, waterlogged deposits preserved wooden tools more than 300,000 years old. These include digging sticks and worked branches, though not spears. They show that early humans used wood widely for many purposes. In Siberia, fragmentary spear points have been associated with mammoth remains, though preservation is limited. Each of these discoveries adds weight to the argument that woodworking was a global tradition. Schöningen is extraordinary for its completeness, but not for its uniqueness. The rarity of wooden finds reflects the bias of preservation. Wood decays quickly, leaving stone tools to dominate the archaeological record. Without exceptional conditions, peat, mud, or rapid burial, wooden technology vanishes. This is why the handful of surviving spears are so important. They are not rare because they were seldom made, but because almost none survived. Their existence hints at countless others lost to soil and time. The Stone Age may in truth have been equally an age of wood, but most of it is invisible to us. A lesser-known detail strengthens this view. Microscopic wear traces on stone tools often show polish consistent with woodworking. Even when wood itself does not survive, the marks on stone reveal its role. Scrapers, flakes, and hand axes were not only for cutting meat or shaping hides, they also carved and smoothed wooden shafts. These indirect signs suggest that woodworking was routine. The surviving spears are only the most visible tips of a much larger technological iceberg. Experimental archaeology confirms their effectiveness. Replicas of the Schöningen spears have been thrown more than 20 meters with accuracy, penetrating targets deeply. This proves that they were not symbolic or crude objects, but effective weapons. At Schöningen, the position of the spear in the elephant's ribs confirms lethal use. Together, these finds demonstrate that early humans were not merely scavengers but skilled hunters, capable of planning and executing large game hunts with wooden weapons alone. Yet mysteries remain. At Clacton, only a single point was found, offering little context. Was it part of a larger weapon or used as a thrusting stick? At Schöningen, one dramatic encounter is captured, but it tells us little about daily hunting practices. At Kalambo Fall, the tools reflect plant gathering rather than animal hunting. Each site offers fragments, never the full picture. Did different groups share techniques across regions, or did they invent them independently? Were spears standardized, or did they vary widely between groups? The record is too thin to be certain. On a planetary scale, wooden technology fits into the broader rhythm of climate. During warm interglacials, forests spread, making wood abundant. During glacial advances, steppes expanded, yet driftwood and sparse trees still provided material. Wood's ubiquity ensured its role in human life across environments. Spears, digging sticks, and throwing clubs were likely carried wherever humans went, adaptable to different ecologies. Their invisibility in most contexts is not a reflection of insignificance, but of preservation's bias. Another important implication is continuity. From 400,000-year-old spear points in England to the complete spears at Schöningen, to Neanderthal hunting weapons at Leringen, a long line of wooden tool use can be traced. This continuity shows that such weapons were not occasional experiments, but core parts of human adaptation for hundreds of thousands of years. Wooden spears were as central to survival as stone flakes. Their persistence reflects both their effectiveness and the cultural traditions that pass their making from one generation to the next. One might imagine these scattered scenes. At Clacton, hunters by an estuary sharpen wood with stone flakes. At Schöningen, a band drives horses into mud, striking with balanced spears. At Leringen, hunters surround an elephant, thrusting a weapon deep into its chest. At Calambo Falls, others dig for roots with smoothed sticks. These moments are distant in time and space, yet bound together by a common theme, the transformation of wood into tools of survival. They reveal that the ingenuity of early humans lay not only in stone, but also in the living material of forests. The Schöningen spears, they're not anomalies, but the clearest expression of a broader pattern. They remind us of the unseen majority of human tools, those lost to decay. They remind us that technology is older, deeper, and more diverse than stone alone suggests. And they remind us that across hundreds of millennia, wood remained a trusted companion of human survival, cut, shaped, and carried into the uncertain landscapes of the Ice Age. The discovery of the Schöningen spears highlights a paradox in archaeology. What we know of early humans is shaped less by what they created than by what the earth chooses to preserve. Stone tools dominate the record because they survive. Bones, under certain conditions, endure. But wood, fiber, hide, and plant matter vanish almost entirely. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans relied heavily on such materials, yet little remains to tell their story. The Schöningen find is a rare exception, a glimpse into a vanished technological world. It reminds us that the archaeological record is profoundly incomplete, and that what survives may not represent what was most important in daily life. Wooden artifacts are especially vulnerable. Left exposed, they rot within years, even buried. Bacteria and fungi break them down. Only in exceptional environments, peat bogs, frozen tundra, or waterlogged lake shores, do they endure. This explains why the Schöningen spears, preserved in the anaerobic sediments of a peat-filled basin, survived when so many others did not. The same is true for other rare finds, such as the Clacton Point in England or the Leringen spear in Germany. Each was preserved only by chance. Without these special conditions, we would know almost nothing of wooden weaponry in deep prehistory. This preservation bias has long distorted our view of human technology. For generations, prehistory was described as a stone age, as if stone alone defined human ingenuity. But stone was only part of the story. Early humans lived in a world of perishable tools, wooden spears, digging sticks, baskets, nets, and clothing of hide or plant fiber. These tools must have been central to survival, yet nearly all have vanished. The archaeological silence is not a reflection of their absence in life, but of their absence in preservation. What survives is not the whole, but a fragment. Lesser-known evidence supports this. Microscopic studies of stone tools often reveal wear patterns consistent with woodworking. Scrapers and flakes bear polish from smoothing shafts, cutting branches, or carving points. Even without wooden artifacts themselves, the stone tools show that wood was shaped routinely. Experiments confirm that such wear patterns develop quickly when stone meets wood. Thus, behind every surviving stone flake may have stood a vanished wooden object, spears, handles, or digging implements. The record hints at a world of wood, even when the wood itself is gone. The absence extends beyond wood. Plant fibers, woven into cords or nets, almost never survive. Yet impressions in clay or rare preserved fibers suggest they existed tens of thousands of years earlier than once believed. Hides, too, must have been used widely for clothing and shelter, but only tools for scraping them remain. The invisibility of these materials narrows our vision of the past. We see stone and bone, but not the softer, more fragile technologies that shaped daily life. The Schöningen spears stand as a reminder that the Stone Age was equally an age of wood, fiber, and fire. Mysteries flow from this absence. How sophisticated was wooden technology among Homo heidelbergensis? Were spears standardized, or did each group experiment with its own designs? Were there other tools, clubs, bows, or composite weapons now lost without trace? Archaeology cannot yet answer. The silence leaves wide gap, where speculation must be cautious. The Schöningen spears are extraordinary, but they may represent only a fraction of what once existed. The true range of early technology is hidden, erased by time. On a planetary scale, this erasure is almost total. Across continents, humans lived in environments rich with perishable materials. In Africa, savanna wood and reeds would have been shaped into digging sticks and huts. In Asia, bamboo might have been split into cutting edges or woven structures. In Europe, spruce and pine provided spears and firewood, yet few of these survive. The result is a distorted map of human ingenuity, skewed toward regions and moments where preservation was kind. Our vision of human history is shaped as much by geology and climate as by human action itself. The Schöningen discovery challenges this distortion. For the first time, a complete set of spears shows the craftsmanship of early humans in wood. They are balanced, carefully shaped, and effective. They demonstrate foresight, planning, and a knowledge of materials. They remind us that stone tools, though durable, were only part of a broader tool kit. Wooden spears extend our view of the past, filling part of the void left by decay. They hint at the sophistication of technologies now lost. A lesser-known aspect of preservation bias is its effect on our understanding of social life. Stone tools tell us about cutting and scraping, but they say little about cooperation, teaching, or cultural traditions. Wooden tools, when they survive, offer a fuller picture. The similarity of the Schöningen spears suggests shared knowledge, perhaps even cultural norms of design. Such evidence, though fragile, expands our sense of human society. It shows that even in deep prehistory, technology was not only about survival but also about transmission of skill across generations. Yet the silence remains deep. We cannot see the wooden shelters that once lined riverbanks. We cannot see the woven mats, the carrying baskets, the nets stretched across streams to catch fish. We cannot see the wooden bowls or spoons, the handles for stone axes, or the torches lit at night. All of these surely existed, but they are gone. The Schöningen spears are rare survivors, isolated voices in a vanished chorus. They remind us of how much has been lost and how partial our knowledge is. On a planetary timescale, this loss underscores the fragility of memory. Earth's surface is in constant flux. Rivers shift, soils erode, glaciers grind, sediments bury and expose. Most traces of human life vanish within centuries. Only under rare conditions do they endure for millennia. The survival of the Schöningen spears is thus not normal, but miraculous. They endured through cycles of ice and warmth, through glacial advance and retreat, through floods and droughts. For 400,000 years they lay buried, preserved by chance. Their survival is as extraordinary as their making. Imagining the unseen technologies is an act of humility. To look at Schöningen is to glimpse only one corner of a vast tapestry. Wooden spears stand in our hands today, but behind them lay worlds of perishable craft now gone. The archaeological record is a shadow, not the whole. It shows us the durable edges of human ingenuity, but not its full breadth. The absence reminds us of the limits of our knowledge and of the silence that surrounds most of the human past. In the end, the Schöningen spears are both presence and absence. They are tangible proof of wooden technology, yet also symbols of all that has vanished. They remind us that history is uneven, shaped by chance as much as by action. They teach that what we know is only a fragment, and that the rest is silence. Their survival is a gift, rare and fragile, carrying across time a whisper of a world mostly lost. In that whisper lies both knowledge and mystery. The knowledge of craft preserved, and the mystery of all the tools, shelters, and traditions that decay has erased forever. The Schöningen spears, though practical hunting tools, also foreshadow a larger story in human history, the gradual transition from pure survival to symbolic thought, from weapons to words, from craft to culture. They stand at a threshold. On one side lies a world of wooden points and stone flakes, of daily struggle in forests and plains. On the other lies the deepening of human imagination, which would eventually produce hafted stone tools, art, and language. The spears are not themselves symbols, but they anticipate the coming of symbols, carrying within their form the seeds of later transformation. The first step in this transformation is technology itself. The spears show foresight and planning. To carve them required selecting wood, shaping it, balancing weight, and perhaps hardening the tip by fire. This process reflects more than instinct. It reflects thought, visualizing an object before it exists, anticipating how it will fly through air or strike into flesh. Such mental projection is a foundation of symbolic reasoning. The spear is not just a stick, it is an imagined tool, designed for a purpose, created in the mind before being shaped by hand. This capacity to imagine is the beginning of abstraction. Hafting marks another leap. At sites younger than Schöningen, stone points appear bound to wooden shafts with resin and sinew. This combination of materials creates a composite tool. It requires understanding how different substances work together and how each can be joined for strength. Hafted spears appear later, around 300,000 years ago, but Schöningen anticipates them. The wooden spears show that shafts already existed, waiting eventually to be joined with stone tips. This step from single material to composite technology mirrors the step from practical to symbolic. It demonstrates the human tendency to combine, to innovate, to go beyond what is immediately given. Fire, too, plays a role in this unfolding. By the time of Schöningen, humans may already have mastered its use. Charred wood and burned fragments appear at sites of similar age. Fire hardens spear tips, extends daylight, and protects campi, but it also changes perception. Flames gather people together, shaping circles of light and conversation. Around fires, knowledge could be shared, memory recited, gestures refined. The link between fire and symbolism is indirect but strong. In firelight, human imagination deepened, weaving together the practical and the mental, the tool and the story. One lesser-known clue comes from pigment traces at other Middle Pleistocene sites. Red ochre fragments appear sporadically, suggesting that humans experimented with coloring materials hundreds of thousands of years ago. Whether for body decoration, symbolic marking, or practical use is uncertain. But their presence hints at growing awareness of representation, of making marks not only for function but also for meaning. The Schöningen spears predate the flourishing of such symbolic acts, but they exist in the same arc of development. They are tools that anticipate a wider horizon. Mysteries remain about language. Did Homo heidelbergensis speak in structured words, or did they rely on gestures and simple calls? The evidence is uncertain. The size and shape of their brains suggest capacity for complex communication, but no direct traces remain. If language existed, it would have transformed cooperation in hunts, enabling detailed planning. If not, gestures and signals still suffice to coordinate. Either way, the spears mark the threshold. They show humans already thinking together, planning actions, and sharing skills, behaviors that later language would amplify into story and culture. On a planetary scale beat, the spears remind us that humans were not unique in tool use, but that their trajectory was distinct. Chimpanzees strip branches to fish for termites, crows bend twigs to catch insects, but only humans carried their tools forward, refining them across generations, embedding them in tradition. The Schöningen spears are part of this lineage. They represent not only individual craft, but also cultural memory. Their similarity suggests teaching, imitation, and continuity. This is the ground from which symbolic traditions, art, ritual, and language would later grow. The emergence of symbols transforms tools into more than function. A stone flake becomes not only a cutter, but also a marker of identity. A line of ochre becomes not only a stain, but a sign. At Schöningen, this step is not yet visible, but its roots are there. The spears embody the potential for meaning beyond use. To carve them with balance and symmetry is already to approach aesthetics, to shape not only for survival, but also for form. Whether or not their makers saw them as beautiful, their craftsmanship carries a quality that later humans would recognize as design. Another path leads toward art. Hundreds of thousands of years after Schöningen, cave walls in Europe would bloom with paintings of bison, horses, and mammoths. Shell beads would be strung as ornaments. Carvings would depict animals and abstract signs. These symbols transformed the human world, allowing communication across space and time. The Schöningen spears are not part of that flowering, but they stand behind it, the foundation of its possibility. They show that humans could already shape the world with intention, a skill that would one day be turned inward into representation and imagination. Yet caution remains. The spears are practical first and foremost. They were used to kill, to survive, to provide food. Any suggestion of symbolic meaning must remain speculative. But their existence allows us to see the direction of change. From wood-shaped for balance arises wood-shaped for ritual. From tools passed hand to hand arises memory passed by story. From cooperation in the hunt arises cooperation in meaning. The line is long, but the seeds are here. One might imagine the hunters at Schöningen not only raising spears but also sharing knowledge of how to make them. A father shows a child how to scrape wood smooth. A woman demonstrates how to balance a shaft in the hand. An elder points to a tree, choosing it for its straight trunk. These acts are more than practical. They are traditions, rituals of teaching. In them lies the first stirrings of symbolic culture, the passing of ideas, not just objects. The spears endure because they were shaped by knowledge, and knowledge is itself a symbol, carried in memory, shared across time. On a planetary scale, this transition from tools to symbols reshaped humanity. It allowed populations to grow, groups to cooperate, and traditions to persist. It laid the foundation for migration across continents, for survival in harsh climates, for the eventual rise of art and language. The Schöningen spears are one of the earliest clear markers along this path. They remind us that even before art on cave walls or words in the air, humans were already imagining, planning, and teaching. They lived not only in the present moment of survival, but in the larger arc of possibility. In the end, the Schöningen spears stand as more than weapons. They are signs of a world on the cusp of change. They foreshadow hafted tools, fire's mastery, pigments, art, and language. They belong to a time before symbols, yet they point toward symbols. Their survival allows us to see this threshold clearly, to recognize in their balance and form the beginnings of a human imagination. They are both practical tools of survival and silent harbingers of the symbolic worlds to come. At the close of the Schöningen story, the scene turns quiet again. The lake that once drew horses and hunters lies still beneath layers of earth. For hundreds of thousands of years, the wooden spears remained buried in peat, their forms locked away in darkness. While glaciers advanced and retreated across northern Europe, while rivers shifted and forests rose and fell, the spears did not move. They waited. This stillness, the endurance of wood across 400 millennia, is as much a part of the story as the hunt itself. It is the silence of deep time, broken only when modern hands uncovered them once more. The preservation is extraordinary. Normally, wood disintegrates within years or centuries. Rain, insects, and fungi reduce it to fragments, leaving no trace. But at Schöningen, the waterlogged sediments created a sealed chamber. Oxygen was cut off, slowing decay. Peat pressed down, layer upon layer, protecting what lay beneath. In this environment, the spears endured. Their survival was not inevitable, but a rare accident of geology. Without it, we would know almost nothing of this chapter of human history. The lake's stillness became a vault, holding fragile objects until science was ready to find them. When the spears were lifted from the ground in the 1990s, they looked almost new, their points still sharp. To hold one was to bridge nearly 500,000 years. In their weight and balance, the presence of their makers could be felt. Yet those makers were long gone. No bones, no faces, no words survived, only tools. The contrast is stark. The hunters vanished into silence, but the spears endured. They became the only voices left, carrying across time the memory of a hunt by an ancient lake. The stillness of preservation also reflects the stillness of interpretation. Archaeologists can describe what they see: cut marks on horse bones, balanced shafts of spruce, flakes of stone. But beyond this, much remains silent. We cannot know the hunter's name, their gestures, their thoughts. Did they speak in words or signals? Did they fear the cold or trust the fire? Did they celebrate after the hunt, or simply carry meat away in silence? These questions cannot be answered. The lake preserved objects, not voices. Its stillness is a reminder of the limits of knowledge. One lesser-known detail adds to the poignancy. Microscopic studies of the sediments around the spears revealed pollen grains, seeds, and traces of plants. These tiny fossils allow reconstruction of the environment: birch trees, reeds, grasses swaying by the water's edge. They are fragile, like the spears themselves, yet they survived together. The pollen shows that the lake was alive with vegetation, a mosaic of habitats supporting herds and predators. In this way, the spears are not only tools but also part of a broader preserved landscape. They link human action with the rhythms of nature, captured in sediments that held both wood and seed. Mysteries remain about why the spears ended up in the lake. Were they lost in the mud during the hunt? Were they deliberately discarded after use? Were they abandoned when groups moved on? Archaeologists debate these questions, but no final answer is possible. The context suggests a hunting and butchery event, yet the precise story is unknown. The stillness of the site prevents certainty. What survives is not a narrative, but fragments, objects in silence, waiting for interpretation. On a planetary scale, the stillness of Schöningen contrasts with the dynamism of Earth's climate. During the time the spears lay buried, glaciers advanced southward multiple times, covering northern lands with ice. Sea levels fell by over 100 meters, then rose again when the ice melted. Forests retreated to refuges, then spread once more. Entire species flourished and vanished. Yet through it all, the spears lay unchanged beneath peat. Their endurance outlasted landscapes, climates, and even species. They survived not because they were meant to, but because chance allowed it. The discovery of the spears in our own time changes how we see the past. Before Schöningen, archaeologists debated whether early humans hunted large animals regularly or relied mainly on scavenging. The wooden spears provided clear proof. Humans were active hunters nearly 400,000 years ago. They planned, cooperated, and shaped tools for purpose. The silence of the lake yielded evidence strong enough to alter theories of prehistory. From stillness came transformation. As archaeology expanded its view of human capacity, the spears also carry symbolic weight for us today. They remind us that much of human history is lost, erased by decay. What survives is rare, precious, fragile. Each artifact is a messenger across time, a survivor from a world otherwise gone. The stillness of Schöningen is thus not only about the past, but also about our relationship with it. It reminds us to tread carefully with evidence, to respect the gaps as much as the discoveries. Silence is as much a part of history as noise. One might imagine the spears lying in darkness year after year, while ice sheets grew and melted above them. Mammoths came and went, Neanderthals evolved and disappeared. Modern humans emerged and spread across the globe. Civilizations rose, cities were built, machines cut into earth. Through all this, the spears waited, still and silent, until uncovered in the late 20th century. Their endurance collapses time, linking distant past with present. They are both ancient and immediate, relics, yet real objects in our hands. The stillness of ancient waters, then, is not emptiness, it is continuity. It holds within it the memory of hunters by a lake, of horses driven into mud, of fires lit against the cold. It carries across ages the knowledge that humans, even then, were skilled, social, and adaptive. It reminds us that behind every artifact is a story, half told and half hidden. The silence of Schöningen is not absence, but depth, echo of lives lived long before us, preserved by chance, revealed by patience. In the end, the spears are more than tools. They are voices from a vanished world, carried through stillness. They tell us that humans stood together on a lake shore 400,000 years ago, shaping wood, raising weapons, and securing survival. They tell us that even in silence, memory endures. And they remind us that much of history lies hidden, waiting in the stillness of earth, until chance and science uncover it once more. The story of the Schöningen spears brings us to a quiet ending. Wooden shafts, balanced and sharp, rest now in museum halls, carefully preserved. Yet their true story lies not in glass cases, but in the deep silence of time from which they came. For 400,000 years they slept in darkness, cradled by the still waters of a lake, sealed in peat. Waiting. Their survival is rare, but their message is simple. Humans have always shaped the world with their hands, their minds, and their cooperation. What endures in the spears is not only craft, but continuity. They show that long before modern humans, people were hunters, planners, and thinkers. They worked together, faced danger together, and passed on knowledge across generations. The wooden shafts carry the imprint of that memory. They are not only tools, they are testimonies of presence, proof that human life, fragile though it was, left marks deep enough to survive the turning of ages. Still, mysteries remain. We do not know the names, the faces, the voices of those who held the spears. We cannot know their hopes, their fears, or their beliefs. What we have are objects, silent yet eloquent, bridging a distance almost beyond measure. They remind us that much of human history is lost, erased by decay, preserved only by chance. Yet they also remind us that fragments are enough. From a few spears and bones, whole worlds can be glimpsed.
As we close this story, the lake at Schöningen grows still again in imagination. The hunters are gone, the herds are gone, the ice has come and gone many times. But the spears remain, carrying their quiet truth into our time. They whisper of endurance, of craft, and of memory. Reminders that even in silence, the human story continues.